Richard, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you for founding Leave Means Leave. And what a great pleasure it is for me to be once again sharing a platform with Tim. The last time we were together was at the opening of a pub in my constituency, and I was very flattered when Richard compared my modest entrepreneurial efforts to Tim's. His are over 900 pubs, which is quite an achievement compared to my modest business. So the real entrepreneur is Tim and not me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. To those of you who I overtook in the queue, my apologies for queue barging. I've always thought it's very un-English to push ahead to the front of the queue, so you're all very kind to let me come in and allow us to start actually a few minutes early. But I think Leave Means Leave is very important because Richard realised something that I'm afraid most of us Eurosceptics didn't realise after the 23rd of June 2016. We thought we had won the referendum, and that this being the great democratic country that it is, that the referendum result would therefore be implemented, and there was no need for further campaigning. But what actually happened was that the people who lost the referendum, who frankly didn't seem to care very much during the referendum, they just assumed arrogantly that they would win and were rather surprised when people didn't do what they were told by their betters, decided that that was the point to start campaigning and ramoning. And Leave Means Leave has filled the gap and made sure that there is some campaign effort. So we remember why leaving is actually a good thing to do. Why do we want to leave? Why do we want to take back control? Well, let's start at the beginning. We want to govern ourselves. It is as simple as that. We, ladies and gentlemen, believe in democracy, and the European Union does not. And they admit it, actually. I did a very interesting meeting with some people from the European Union, and I was saying that we'd all voted to leave because we believed in democracy, because what we wanted was control of our own affairs. And one of the people present said to me, but doesn't democracy have to be controlled? Now, that is the antithesis of what we think. We think that individuals coming together as families and to society create the best form of government, that democratic accountability makes government better. Why? Because it can be criticised, it can have its mistakes pointed out to it, and it is more flexible and open to change. It was Douglas Jay who famously said, as a Labour cabinet minister in 1947, the truth is the man in Whitehall really does know best. Now, as a Labour member, he would probably say the person in Whitehall because he would want to be more politically correct. But that's the only updating really that the pro-Europeans have. They would use the politically correct language, but ultimately they believe they know best about how our lives should be run, and we do not. And so taking back control is essential and good, and it will make us all better off. How can I argue that so confidently when the Treasury, the Bank of England, the IMF, the OECD, any other jumble of initials tells us that we will be worse off, we will be ruined and a plague of frogs will come upon us? How can I so confidently say that they are wrong? Because we know from history that countries that have the rule of law and democratic accountability are more prosperous than those that do not. It is something that we have led the way in, and the United States has led the way in, to show how real prosperity exists. Those countries led by corrupt bureaucracies always have low economic growth and lower economic growth, and you see that with the euro. You see the failure of the European Union's economic model. Now, I make no pretense about being the most modern person in the world. Indeed, I should be offended if I were thought to be modern. And I will confess that my father always thought the word modern was a swear word. But on this occasion, I think we are the modern ones, because we recognise that the future is outside the closed fortress European model. It is looking to the wider world. Richard said, or the little programme said, sponsored I think by Rank Screen Advertising, said that 93% of the population live outside the European Union. So what are we fussing about with the 7% of the population within the European Union? Our opportunities are global, and that should be really exciting for us, whereas the European Union is a timorous, cautious, nervous organization that is worried that its privileges will be under attack and therefore builds a fortress to protect itself against the competition from the rest of the world, and we are against this. But we're also against it because the European Union is a project of vested interests. I speak as somebody who set up a business. And I should now actually be jolly keen on all the regulations that come from the European Union, the MiFID IIs and such like. Why? Because it makes it much harder for anybody else to set up to compete with you once you are an incumbent. But if I go back to 2007 and think, could I set up a business now under the current rules, I would find it much, much harder. I would need more capital, I would need a greater scope of investors, I would need a greater number of people, many of whom would not actually be earning revenue for the business, but would be there organizing compliance. To no benefit of clients, simply to extra cost and reducing business. And the same is true across the whole approach of the European Union. It is for incumbents and it is against challengers. But as Richard said, if you have a vibrant economy, you help the least well off the most. Because the EU protects the producer against the consumer. That's what all the tariffs are about. The tariffs are about creating a cosy arrangement for producers who have thousands of lobbyists in Brussels and not for the individual consumer. That's why when we leave, I want us to get rid of tariffs on food, clothing and footwear on such as we do not produce straight away. There is no reason to protect inefficient continental businesses once we've left the European Union, and we should look to withdraw tariffs on things that are created in the United Kingdom over a reasonable timescale to allow businesses to adapt to the changing conditions. Why? Because this helps consumers, it improves people's standard of living. But the other key thing to improving standards of living is dealing with the free movement of people. Because the free movement of people has hurt the least well off the most. Why is that? Well, it's because if you are unskilled, then really the only thing on which you compete is price. And there are two ways of that price being raised. One is by reducing the supply, and the other is by government fiat in setting minimum wages. That's why minimum wages have come in and have been increased to try and deal with this problem. But actually, for some businesses, it's been easy. They haven't needed to innovate or automate or to invest. They've just been able to call upon a large pool of unskilled labour to come over to keep prices down for the least well-off in our society. We want to change that. But not only change it so that the unskilled get paid more, but so that their opportunities to have better jobs are improved because businesses will have the incentive to train them rather than drawing on this pool from overseas, and will have the incentive to automate, ensuring that the jobs they are doing are better jobs anyway. That's one of the really exciting opportunities of Brexit. So when Richard says it's the least well-off who will do best from Brexit, that is true. Free markets and enterprise will help them, and preventing mass movement of unskilled labour will ensure the value of their labour rises. And that will help automation, which will make our economy more productive. It's a very exciting prospect. And we are almost there. And how best should we get there? Well, you'll be reassured to know that I haven't in the last few hours suddenly come to the conclusion that Chequers is marvellous. Because the more I think about Chequers, the more rotten I know it is. It is not... It is not leaving the European Union, it is vassalage. It is being tied down by the European Union and giving us inflexibility, meaning that we are still governed by their rules in terms of goods and agri-foods, and that we have no say in those rules, and that the European Union's highest court, the European Court of Justice, or the Court of Justice of the European Union, if you wish to call it that, will be the ultimate arbiter, and we will have no say. And our only ability not to do that could lead to us being penalised. Penalised by an organisation to which we no longer belong. It's a completely outrageous proposition. It's worse than what we have in terms of penalties at the moment. The penalties could be higher than if we didn't implement an EU directive now as a member state. This is exactly what the Prime Minister said she would not do at Lancaster House. At Lancaster House... No. Certainly not. I'm said again and again, but thank you, I always like a bit of robust heckling. It's very British. We like robust meetings. But we need to change the policy, and we need to persuade the Prime Minister to evolve her position, because that's the Downing Street word. We like evolution. And in evolution, I have a nasty feeling that the Chequers plan is the missing link. But that we want it to evolve back to Lancaster House, where the Prime Minister said so clearly we must not be half in and half out, because it's in leaving properly that the opportunities are there. But I would be happy to have a deal. I would be happy to have a Canada-style free trade deal, as long as it does not divide the United Kingdom